Hey guys, and welcome to my Season 10 Advanced Riven Guide. In today's Riven Guide, I'll be showing the best runes to play with for Season 10, as well as the best build, and many other things like the laning phase itself, as well as team fighting, and tips and advice, and even mechanics. So make sure to check everything out if you want to become a really good Riven player. But before we get into the guide and everything, first things first, I would like to say that if you are looking for challenger games or you're looking for a streamer to watch and learn from, make sure to check out my stream because I am streaming a lot of challenger games as well as very high elo games in general, so make sure to check that out if you want to become better. And with all of that being said, let's just get right into the Riven Guide. Riven currently has 3 amazing rune pages that are all extremely strong in Season 10. Depending on the matchup that you are going to play against, you will have to swap your rune page to have the most optimal setup for your game. The first setup that I'm going to cover is the Aftershock page. This Aftershock page is extremely strong. It's actually really broken, especially in the patch that we are living in right now. It's extremely strong, but has to be used in short trades. Once you can use your Aftershock and once it procs, you will have to back off so you can have the most optimal trades in your lane. The second page we have is Riven with Conqueror, and this page is especially used in games where you will have very long extended fights. It's also a really good page against team comps that will have 1 or 2 tanks. And then the last page we have is Riven with Electrocute. This page is really good against team comps that have no tanks at all, and it's also a really good page if you are going to build a lot of lethality in the game. If you are very unsure of which page to go for in your game, then I always recommend you to go for the Conqueror page, as this page is the most optimal to go for in pretty much every single game. Now moving on to the best builds to go for on Riven, starting off with the starter items first. When you find yourself in a poke matchup, you'll always want to buy a Dorn Shield and a 1 potion as the first item in the game. So let's say you are playing against a champion that is long ranged and does damage from a distance, you always want to have a Dorn Shield, as that's gonna help you to sustain in the laning phase so you can survive for a little bit longer. If you find yourself in another matchup like a melee one, for example, that could be a Jax or any kind of other form that's melee, you can also start the game off with a Doran Blade and 1 potion. This is by far my most favorite one, as this grants you a very strong level 1 because you got more health and you also have a lot of damage, more than a Dorn Shield. So I like that one. I recommend you guys to take that one at all times if you don't know what to do. You also have another option, which is the longsword with the 3 potions, and this one is especially good if you want to have slightly more damage as well as have a little bit more sustain throughout the early few levels. Do not forget though, this one is a very risky one because the enemy opponent has more chance to all-in you, and that might actually leave you losing that lane, so I much more recommend you guys to take the Dorn Blade instead. As for the last starter item, you've also got the longsword with the revealable potion, and this is something that Boxbox, a streamer, is doing a lot because you can spare a lot of gold throughout the early few levels by going with this starter item. Moving on to the more complete items, we have the Hex Drinker, and this is something that you will have to buy if you play against very heavy AP. Now with the more complete item sets, there's 2 item sets which are extremely strong right now. The first item set is the Dead Stance build into the Black Cleaver and the Last Whisper. With the Conqueror being changed in Season 10, Last Whisper is a crucial item right now, and Dead Stance is an extremely broken item to go for in Season 10, so this one is by far the best build to go for regardless of what the enemy team picks. Now let's say that the enemy team doesn't have any tanks at all. You also have a secondary page, which is the full lethality page, which is also being combined with the Electrocute page in the rune page. This one is a very good rune page to go for if the enemy team doesn't have any tanks at all, because you can now one-shot people, which makes it even better for Riven. Depending on how the game will go, you can also build Black Cleaver as the first item and then get the full lethality afterwards. As long as you play with the runes that I'm literally showing on the screen right now, this build will work and it's going to be very strong. The last item, which I also recommend a lot to you guys, is Tiamat. This one can be bought as a first item in the game if you're playing against very heavy tanks, as this item is going to help you to shove in your lane and then being able to roam afterwards. Now moving on to the laning phase of Riven itself, you will have to adapt your build and you will have to adapt your runes as well as your entire gameplay depending on the matchup that you are going to play against. For instance, if you're playing against a ranged champion, you always want to play safe with a Dorn Shield in the early game and set up ganks for as much as possible. Riven really excels at setting up her lane for ganks because she has a lot of tools to get close to someone, as being able to stun them as well. So you definitely want to focus on that. But you also have a secondary option, and that is to cheese a ranged champion from behind. Riven is a really strong champion in terms of all-in potential, so if you find yourself in a ranged matchup, always try to find a way to cheese someone from behind and then simply go for the all-in. This is by far one of the best methods to win very hard matchups. And then you also have another matchup, which are the tanks. And if you find yourself in a tank matchup, there's multiple things that you can do. First of all, you can buy Tiamat as the first item in the game and then shove in for as much as possible. But if that's something that you don't like to do, you can also just try to farm for as much as possible. Try to get the TP advantage in your laning phase and try to roam and be more useful than the enemy opponent. One thing is really good, Riven outskills any tank in the game. Any kind of tank that you can imagine, Riven will most likely always outskill the tank. So even if you cannot get things done throughout the early game against a tank, you always want to focus on just farming up and eventually outskill the tank so that you can still carry the game around the mid and the late game. Moving on to the mid and the late game with Riven, the way how I play Riven is actually very easy. Once my flash is up, I always try to focus on grouping around in the game, trying to get objectives together with the team, and eventually use my flash as a tool to engage into the enemy team and hit multiple targets and perhaps even get a lot of kills as well. However, if your flash is down and you have your TP up, you can also split push around the map. As long as your teleport is up, you can always group around your team and get things done. So always focus around split pushing once your flash is down and your teleport is up. Once your flash is down as well as your teleport is down as well, the third option that you will have is to split push around the map and eventually try to find a way in order to cheese the enemy team right from behind. Riven is really good at cheesing people from behind, as she can literally kill someone from 100 to 0 in seconds, and that's why you should always be taking a look into a way so you can get on the back line of the enemy team. As for team fighting, there's also multiple options that you have. First of all, the first option that you have is once your flash is up, like I've said before, you can use your flash in order to flash onto the enemy backline and get multiple one-shots and easily carry a team fight on your own. The secondary option that you have is to flank the enemy team from behind by either walking down right behind them or TPing right behind them, whatever is the best. This is a very effective method to get to the enemy backline without using your flash. You also have another option, which is to protect your AD carry as well as your AP carry, and this is something that you can do especially if you are actually behind with Riven. But anyway, Riven is a really good champion in terms of damage and in terms of stun in order to help your AD carry and AP carry survive. If they have a lot of kills, sometimes it's the best option to just protect them so that they can carry the team fight for you. As for some really good tips for Riven, first of all, setting up the lane for ganks, which I've also mentioned earlier on this video, is something very important to do. Her tools are amazing. She has a lot of stuns, she has a lot of damage, and she can get close to champions really easy by using all of her dashes. Make sure to abuse the setting up for ganks for as much as possible, because it can really change games, especially if you have a really hard matchup. Another really amazing advice is once you fall behind in the game, become a tank. Riven doesn't necessarily need damage in the game in order to carry games. You can also pretty much go full tank and you can still do a lot of damage and you will have a lot of stuns and you can really get things done within the team fight. So if your team is missing out on the tank or you're falling behind very hard, just buy tank items and you will be fine. Last thing, if you have really trouble with a lot of combos with Riven, go into the practice tool and practice her first. Make sure that you can pull off every single combo with Riven before actually trying to go into a ranked game, as doing combos with Riven is one of the most important things in the game. If you cannot do combos with Riven, you cannot carry games with Riven. That's something that I can tell you for sure. Also, the same thing with wall jumps. You will be wall jumping a lot in the game and you will be doing really big wall jumps, and you want to make sure that you can do all of them. So make sure to practice that within the practice tool as well. Now moving on to the mechanics of a Riven. I've actually made an entire video that shows every single mechanic that Riven has in terms of combos. It shows all the best combos out there. So if you want to become better with Riven and you want to master all of the combos, make sure to check out this entire upcoming clip. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you guys in my next upcoming Riven videos, man.